Hello students and welcome back to our English lessons. Today we will be covering a chapter on defining relative clauses, what those are and how you can use them in your day-to-day English speaking. We will cover in the next few slides. Let's start with a short text. It's called The Best Job in the World. This is Tommy Lynch, a man whose job is to test water slides. It's a job which almost every young person would love. He travels to holiday resorts which have water slides, has to go on them, and reports back to the travel company where he works. There are a lot of people who would like Tommy's job, so his company can expect a lot of applications when he leaves. Now, after we have read this text, I will show you a few underlined relative pronouns. The first one is the relative pronoun whose, which denotes possession. Then we have which is a relative pronoun that we use for things, animals, non-human things. Again, we have which, and we have where, which we use for places to denote certain places. And finally, we have who, which we use when we talk about people and human beings in general. Now, why do we need these relative pronouns? We need these relative pronouns so we can form a defining relative clause. A defining relative clause tells us a little bit more about the subject or the noun that we are talking about. So, for instance, here we have Mr. Tommy Lynch, pictured on the left. We know that his name is Tommy Lynch. We know that he's a man, but also with the help of our relative clause, we are aware of his profession, a man whose job is to test water slides. So we know that Tommy Lynch tests water slides and that this is his job. This way we get a lot more information about the subject that we are speaking on. Furthermore, here we have a little bit more information about the job itself. It's a job which almost every young person would love. So this is a sort of opinion about this job, about the quality of this job. Then in the next sentence, we have mentioned holiday resorts. So we know that Tommy travels to holiday resorts which have water slides. So this tells us a little bit more about the resorts themselves. We know that these resorts have water slides. And over here, we have the next part of the sentence, which goes that Tommy has a go on them and reports back to the travel company where he works. So we have a little bit more information about the travel company. It is the travel company in which Tommy works. And the final one, we have the sentence, there are a lot of people who would like Tommy's job. So here we are defining or giving a little bit more information about these people here. We know that there are probably, or we presume that there are a lot of people who would like Tommy's job. These are the kind of people we are talking about. Now, with our little exercise in mind, try to fill in the gaps in our little rectangle. So when do we use which relative pronoun? Now let's check. We use which for things and animals, the cat which is sitting on the floor. We use who for people, the woman who is laughing. We use where for places, the school where you study English. And we use whose to indicate possession, the man whose job it is to help sick people. With our four main relative pronouns in mind, take a few moments to solve this next exercise. Now that we have finished, let's check our results. A dream job. It's a job which attracted over 34,000 applications from around the world. We use which because we are talking about a job, and the job is, of course, not a human being. Everyone who applied had to send in a 60-second video which explained why they wanted the job and what skills they had to offer. So here we use who with everyone because it implies people, and we use which for video because, of course, it does not imply people. Now let's move on to number 4. It's a place where it's sunny and warm all year round. We are describing the conditions of this place. So we will use where, because where is used with giving a bit more information about a certain location. And then we use which because it denotes a noun which does not imply a human being. And number 6, the person who got the job had to explore the islands nearby. The 16 people whose videos most impressed the employers, because we have a possession, the videos that belong to these 16 people, and the lucky man who was finally chosen for the job was Ben Southall from the UK. Now on to our next exercise. We first need to complete the defining relative clauses with one of our 4 relative pronouns, who, where, which, and whose, or whose. Then you need to write the words that these defining relative clauses are defining. So for instance, here we have clothing which nurses, police officers, soldiers, etc. wear. That implies a uniform. Here we use which because it is describing the clothing and not the workers, because if it were describing the workers, it would be describing people and we would have to use who. But in this case, which is used because we are always looking at this noun over here, which is clothing. Take a few moments and finish the exercise. Now let's check. A person whose job is to look after the passengers on a plane. A flight attendant. A place where a surgeon works is a hospital. A person who is in charge of a shop or office is a clerk. The money which you receive for a job is a salary. A person whose place of work is a laboratory, that's a scientist. A place where workers answer phones and give out information is an office. And a job which you only do for part of the time, it's a part-time job. Now, a few final things to mention. We can often use that, the pronoun that, instead of which. So instead of saying the cat which is sitting on the table, we can say the cat that is sitting on the table. In informal English, we can also use that instead of who. So instead of the woman sitting at the bar, or the woman who is sitting at the bar, we can say the woman that is sitting at the bar. This is not usually used in formal English. So in formal English, this would be wrong, but in informal English, that is a pretty safe option if you're not sure which one to use when talking about people and when talking about animals and non-living things, objects, nature, and stuff like that. But in formal English, you need to still be mindful of this difference. In formal English, you can use that instead of which, but not instead of who. So who will always need to be used if you're talking about people in formal English. And here I leave you with a written definition and some examples of defining relative clauses. So as we have said before, a defining relative clause comes immediately after a noun and tells us which person, thing, or place we are talking about. It can be in the middle or at the end of a sentence. We do not put a comma before the clause, and this is very important. So no commas are used here. For instance, she's the nurse who looked after my mother. So here we have our defining relative clause, who looked after my mother, and it came after the noun nurse. And here we have the farm where my cousin picks fruit is enormous. So here we have a relative clause. So the farm where my cousin picks fruit, and it defines the farm. So the noun that came before it. Thank you for your time and see you next time.